Hello, everybody. Hi. Hi, Blue. Hi, Nina. Hi, Henry. Hi, Wolf, if you're still there. Um, so we're getting into volume 6 today. Um, and this feels kind of like a perfect, like, extended birthday present to me. Yesterday was my birthday. I'm 32, which feels like not real. Um, But I got some Korean barbecue and I saw My Neighbor Totoro in a theater because they were doing this like special theater showing thing of it for a limited time. And it was super fun. And now I get to read more Yuwu, which is also super fun. Thank you, Henry. Yeah, Wolf, the cover is very a lot of the covers from the series have been very mysterious. Like there's a lot to look at and a lot to try and figure out, like, well, what does that mean? Um, I just posted in the Discord, but I was trying to figure out who the person in the center is. Yeah, definitely. Like I have a lot of fun doing these streams. So like it's like I get to read more and find out more of what happens. So that is like absolutely a gift. Henry, I don't know. That sounds ominous. Is it? Oh, is it Murong Chuyi? Does he wear the super high collar? I forgot. And he's looking asleep in a coma? I don't know. Um, yeah, I guess that could be Murong Chuyi. Um, Probably, right? Yeah. It looks like Chuaning and walks like Chuaning. It's probably Murong Chuyi. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, well, we already read chapter one, or chapter, God, I always forget the chapter numbers are just ongoing. We already read chapter 160, so we get to go right into the second chapter of this volume. Yes, Wolf, I really enjoyed Totoro. It was the English dub version, and I feel like I've heard the Totoro song before in Japanese, and they did an English dub of the song too, and I kind of wish they didn't do that, but like that's my only complaint. I really liked it otherwise. Um, it's very cute. Yeah, I just that was one movie, one Studio Ghibli like super famous movie, kind of the one that I had seen, but not since I was a kid, so I didn't remember it at all. So it was basically like a new movie to me. So it was super fun. And I also, there's a pool at my apartment. I hung out at the pool, and I just basically got to like do what I wanted to for the day. So that was great. Wait, what? We're submains? Yes, it was a great day. Um, I think I'm gonna get subtitle mains. Yeah, I don't know. Wolf, I don't know what you meant. Oh, subtitle mains. Yes. Right. Because why I didn't like it as much with the dub. It was really the dub of the voices was fine. It was really just the fact that they actually had someone new sing the song in English. And to me, I was like surprised by that because normally they don't dub over the song and like redo the song for English versions of things. So it confused me. But yeah, I guess I still like the subtitle versions more usually. But Studio Ghibli movies usually have a really good dub, so it doesn't bother me the same as it does with some things. But yeah. Actually, the new one, The Boy and the Heron, I I think because Robert Pattinson is in the English voice cast, just doing the freakiest voice possible, I really like the English dub of that in particular. But yeah, normally I'm like the sub is usually usually better for me. So, I am gonna get started. Yeah, I do like Christian Bale as Howl. I actually kind of prefer the original Howl, though. But that dub is really good. So, we're on page 19 of volume 6. On chapter 161, which is called Lies. The storm worsened in the wake of Mengzi leaving. Muffled thunder rumbled overhead, pressing down on the capital of Chonghua. Gumang was asleep, but Moshi knew he was afraid of thunder. Oh, he didn't move from the room. Evening found him at the west-facing window, trimming the candle wick with a pair of golden shears. The hazy flame flared, setting the whole room flickering with light. He returned to Gumang's side and sat on the edge of the bed. Gumang's pillow had shifted sideways as he slept, so Moshi helped him straighten it back out. It was at this point that he discovered the book beneath the pillow. Moshi froze for a moment before pulling out the book. There was no title inscribed on its cover, but upon flipping it open to the first page and seeing that familiar hand, he immediately understood. This was the booklet of notes Gumang had written in every day to retain his memories. He had wanted to read it when he'd first discovered it, but Gumang had stopped him. It would be far too embarrassing, he'd said. Moshi was only to read it after he lost his memories again. Moments later, realizing he had put a damper on Moshi's mood, Gumang had cajoled him. Ah yeah, who knew how much he might still remember 10 or 20 years in the future, and told Moshi not to worry so much. Moshi hadn't expected those 10 or 20 years to pass so quickly. He spread the book over his lap, lowering his gaze to read every word written on its pages. Gumang had recorded many things in this compendium of memories. He'd written of his life in the academy, and after, when he'd enlisted. He wrote of Murong Lian, the emperor, and of course, Moshi himself. But Moshi quickly realized that no matter who was mentioned, Gumang only wrote good things about them, even if they had treated him poorly in the past. In all that thick stack of pages, there wasn't a single word of complaint. Gumang had experienced untold humiliation at the academy, yet he wrote only that the pastries at the northern side of the academy are golden and crispy, delicious and cheap. How nice. He'd risked death the first time he served in battle, but he only said, I made quite a few good friends, and not a single one lost his life. What luck. He wrote of Liu Jianxing, saying he was valiant and heroic. He wrote of the emperor, saying he had many far-reaching worries. Even when writing of Murong Lian, the strokes of his brush were graceful, inscribing the mild words. Someone dear to me once said he gave me grace. I mustn't be careless with him. Everything he wrote was good. The misery that pervaded his life, the malice that had dogged him like a shadow, the suffering of his unanswered yearning, all of it had been excised. He'd endured endless torment for his overly ambitious dream, yet he only wanted to remember the small measure of sweetness he'd experienced. Anything of the ugly, the dark, and the crazed was no more than dust from a tumble, easily brushed off and too unimportant to mention. Reading this book, it seemed Gumang had lived a pleasant and contented life. He'd experienced nothing but kindness. Wax pulled silently in the lamp. This book of memories was surpassingly gentle, but it made Moshi choke with emotion. It was a long time before he recovered enough to keep reading. Just as he flipped to the page about their first meeting at the academy, eyes swimming with tears, he heard a soft movement at his side, like the rustle of a cup stirring. He swiped at his eyes before turning, only to find that Gumang had woken some time ago. and was silently gazing at him with those lake blue eyes. You're unhappy. Moshi stared back at him. Why are you crying? Their conversation seemed to echo their first reunion at Luomei Pavilion. His Gu Shishang's wit, cleverness, and brash attitude had come and gone, leaving nothing behind. But this time, Moshi would never disdain him, scorn him, or bully him. Moshi reached out, mussing Gumong's hair as he bent his mouth in a faint smile. I'm not unhappy. I'm reading the things you wrote, and I like them very much. Things I wrote. In his astonishment, Gumong dragged the book off of Moshi's knees and into his own lap to flip through. He lowered his head to look at the pages, looked up at Moshi, then lowered his head and looked some more. His mind had been ripped to shreds by the black magic curse. Only his trust in Moshi stubbornly remained. Gumong closed the book. Can't remember, but if you like it, I must have done well. You're always right. After a pause, he piped up, curious. What did I write about? You wrote about many things that you've forgotten. The past 30 years of your life. Meat bun. Blue, we are all trying to catch meat bun. Constantly, every day. Oh. Gumong puffed out his cheeks in thought. He cocked his head and racked his brain, but he couldn't remember anything. That didn't seem to bother him. He asked placidly, How is my life, then? Moshi was silent for a long time. His throat seemed to be filled with the saltiness of seawater, bitter wetness soaking every breath. In the face of Gumong's calm, inquisitive gaze, he hesitated. You only ever met kind people and had happy experiences, he finally said with a smile. It was a very good life. Gumong's clear blue eyes widened, his long lashes fluttering. Really? Before Moshi could squeeze any words out through his pain, a smile bloomed on Gumong's face. Then I'm lucky. He patted his own head. It's a little sad, though. So many good things, but I can't remember any of them. I only remember you. You've always been good to me. Moshi's heartache turned into sharp knives that sawed into his bones. He almost didn't dare look into Gumong's limpid eyes. Not always, he said helplessly. I've also done things that hurt you. I've also distanced myself from you. He said that in his head. Gumong cocked his head in thought before amending his words. You've always been the best. Despite Moshi's silence, Gumong stretched a hand out. He clumsily patted Moshi's hair, mimicking how Moshi comforted him. Moshi realized with sudden clarity that not remembering might in fact be freeing for Gumong. He wouldn't have to mourn Lu Jianxing's death, wouldn't be burdened by the death of his 70,000 comrades, wouldn't look down and see the blood of innocent people in the lines of his palms every day and every night. Not anymore. He could just look at his book of memories. He could keep only the good things from his past. But Moshi couldn't do the same. The black magic demonic chi within Gumong was still on the verge of spiraling out of control. Only by finding those two lost souls and making Gumong whole could he keep his beloved from falling into hell. Shishong. No matter what happens. Moshi took hold of his hands and spoke with utmost earnestness. I will always stay with you. Gumong nodded serenely. That's really good. I'll always stay with you too. Rain sheeted down outside the window, and thunder rumbled again. But this time, Gumong wasn't afraid. He turned that blue gaze toward the lead-gray sky, looking at it with a confused curiosity. It was instead Fando, asleep on the ground, who was woken by the noise. Whimpering softly, he scurried over to the bed to hunker down between his two masters. Night fell, and rain drummed down. But rain would always cease, and dawn would always come. Just like in that book of memories placed between them. In recollection, only the brightest moments were remembered. Eat burn. As expected, the Emperor was not inclined to let Moshi take Gumong to Lin-An. The chances of finding some Grandmaster cultivator out in the wilds are minuscule. Why not wait for Jiang Fuli to return from his travels and have him take a look? We've retrieved the remnant of the demon blood beast's soul. Zhou He is studying it now. He may develop a technique to inhibit black magic energy quite soon. If you stay in the capital, you can keep an eye on his progress at least. If he succeeds, he can immediately use it to help Gumong. I'm sure Zhou He is itching to help Gumong. But Moshi was determined to try. With the aid of Mengze's persuasion, the Emperor relented. Nevertheless, before the day of Moshi's departure, the Emperor called him once more to Juchue Hall. Shihejun, the border between Yao and Chonghua is fraught. We fear another major battle may break out at any time. You have always been a clear-headed man. You know Subject Gu's intent and understand his character. He'd never wish you to delay matters of war because of him. Although we have agreed to grant you a month of leave so you may search Lin-An for this soul-summoning technique, we expect you'll return on time, regardless of the outcome. Yes, Moshi said in acquiescence. The Emperor nodded. After thinking a moment, he added a few more words of warning. Wang Shujun's life is still in jeopardy, and Yue Juntian's health is poor in his old age. The stage of Chonghua's internal affairs leaves us uneasy. There have been assassins in the palace, and the identities of those who attacked Wang Shujun are still unknown. We worry whoever is working behind the scenes may target you as well. You must be careful on this journey. When you reach the prefecture of Lin-An, visit Yue Juntian if you have the time. Urge him to work faster and refine the tool Zhou He wants. And tell the Yue clan to be careful as well. Something tells us we haven't seen the last of those assassins' attacks. Moshi agreed to it all. As he finally made to leave, the Emperor called out to him yet again. Wait a minute. We have one more thing to say. He turned his head. This time, the Emperor wore a hesitant expression and didn't immediately voice his thoughts. He pondered for several moments before saying, Over the past few days, there have been all manner of rumors concerning your relationship with Subject Gu. Moshi waited for him to elaborate. We won't ask too much now, but gossip and public opinion cannot be taken lightly. Regardless of what relationship the two of you share in truth, those who wish you harm will say unspeakable things. What matters actually pass between the two of you are far less important than the guesses they'll make as to your motives. There are even some who say you're the same as Gumong, that both of you plot to reenact history and crown yourselves king like Hua Poan, that your intentions are treacherous and impure. Moshi only smiled at him. Does your Imperial Majesty believe it? What do you think? The Emperor rolled his eyes. No matter how paranoid we are, would we suspect someone who's sworn the vow of calamity? We're merely making the point that carrying on like this will erode your authority. It would be best to distance yourself from Subject Gu. Pausing, he gazed probingly at Moshi. Ah, but you two aren't actually... Did your Imperial Majesty not say you wouldn't ask? We were just thinking aloud. More than 10 years ago, when my family fell from grace, it was Gu Shishang who took care of me and stuck by me when I was at my lowest. His best friend, Liu Jianxing, told him not to get close to a fallen noble, in case I encountered even more misfortune and dragged him down with me. Does your Imperial Majesty know how he replied? The Emperor was silent. His answer in the past is my answer today. Moshi drew in a breath, his exquisite features gilded by the sunlight passing through the open windows. He said, calm and resolute, nothing has more value than sincere feeling. What was left unspoken was obvious, regardless of whether the connection was between brothers, comrades, or lovers. If there was sincerity in it, there would be no regrets, no matter what others said or what troubles came. He would not let go of Gumong, nor would he step aside for fear that remaining at Gumong's side meant he'd be stained. Back when Moshi had sunk deep into the mud, it was this man who had reached out a pristine hand and rescued him from the cold and the filth. Gumong was not his stain, but the light in his heart that had never gone out. At this point, there was nothing left to ask that wouldn't make things uncomfortable. The Emperor sat down wearily in his rosewood chair, leaning back against the Kuei dragons chasing each other along its rounded back, and waved a hand at Moshi. Good grief, what else can we say? We can't insist without sounding downright unreasonable. All right, enough. Get the hell out. He huffed. You stress us out, the both of you. Moshi pursed his thin lips, made his obeisance, and left Juchue Hall. He headed for his manor to pack for his and Gumong's journey to Lin'an. Ooh, we're going on a trip. We're going on a journey. Blue, he's so sick of these homosexuals. Right? Oh. Okay, we are on chapter 162, which is called Fiefdom of Lin'an. Lin'an was a short journey from the capital of Chonghua, less than a day's travel by water on a spiritual boat. Their travels were smooth and peaceful, aside from the clamoring of monkeys echoing from the mountains on both sides. Why is it so funny to me that they're just passing by literal monkeys? I don't know why. Like, there's all these, like, spiritual beasts and animals, and then there's just, like, regular monkeys. Oh, bye, Wolf. Thank you for dropping in. I don't know why. That's funny to me. As they passed villages and towns, the vast structures of the capital with their sweeping eaves and sturdy brackets gradually yielded to humbler dwellings with whitewashed walls and umber-black roof tiles, clustered close to the water. The boat maiden steering their vessel was a Lin'an girl of 17 or 18 who had spent much of her life on this canal. Moshi and Gumong were dressed like commoners for the journey, and this boat maiden's chief cares were things like the price per catty of fish and shrimp, or the next day's forecast on the water. She had no interest in political affairs whatsoever, and didn't recognize either of them. On the journey, she giggled and chatted with them in a sweet Wu dialect, speaking of sundry things, the customs of Li Chun in one breath, and the harsh winters of Yanbei City in the next. About how the beef noodle soup from Fan City tasted best with chili flakes, or how crisp the patries were at a certain stall on the northern frontier. Gumong listened mindlessly as he munched on the little dried fish the boat maiden had given him. You've been to so many places, he cut in. By the way, I absolutely love the throwback to the pastry stall. on the northern frontier. You know, from the first book. Me? But I haven't been to those places at all. The boat maiden's laughter was more bright than the glimmering waves stirred by her thin bamboo pole. When I reach a port, I tell people to bring over stuff that's good to use and eat. I don't get off the boat more than a few times a year. She giggled. My toes never touch the soil. I'm a fairy of the water. Such a statement would have sounded ridiculously affected if it had been said by someone else. But the girl was ethereally beautiful, cheeks dimpling deeply when she smiled. Her eyes were more expressive still, so dark they shone purple. She stood at the prow, slender hands moving the bamboo pole through the water. With her fluttering sleeves and hair dark as ink, she looked like a river goddess risen from the waters. It was too bad she was a little chatterbox. Moshi soon grew tired of listening to her prattle on in her lilting tones, but when he turned to glance at Gumong, he found him rapt, his blue eyes wide as he stared. When he was most engrossed in her tales, he momentarily forgot to chew on the dried fish dangling from his mouth. My Shifu brought me onto the boat when I was little, and I've lived on it since. After my Shifu passed, it's been just me. Don't underestimate me because my boat's small. I've weathered every sort of storm and carried every sort of person. Seeing Gumong's interest, Moshi humored the boat maiden and asked, Who else have you carried? Quite a few major cultivators, the boat maiden answered with undisguised glee. Their titles were too long. I can't remember them. But let me tell you, when my Shifu was still around, even Yue Juntian, the feudal lord of Lin An, took a ride on our boat. Briefly speechless, Moshi grimaced. Yue Juntian is a grandmaster artificer. Why would he need to travel on someone else's boat? The boat maiden widened her eyes. But it's the truth, and why wouldn't he? He loved to go out in disguise when he was younger. He really did take our boat, really. I was little then and didn't recognize him. Later, my Shifu told me the lecherous one was Yue Juntian himself. He'd come to Lin An City to mess around whenever the urge took him. My Shifu said it was lucky I was so little. If I'd been any older, I would have needed to rub mud on my face. Otherwise, with my looks, he might have taken a liking to me and kidnapped me to serve as his mistress. Thank goodness he's too old to play these days. We boat people have all been saying we don't see him come down on private business anymore. She pressed a hand to her heart. Phew, what a relief. Her story didn't mean much to Gumong, but it left Moshi feeling rather awkward. Yue Juntian was a lustful man. All of Chonghua knew it. Ultimately, the animosity between the younger members of the Yue clan, between Murong Chuyi and Jiang Yeshui, was the result of Yue Juntian's philandering. Even so, Moshi hadn't expected Yue Juntian to have such a poor reputation among commoners as well, down to the girls of his own fiefdom. Evidently, these girls viewed him as a villain in a horror story and spoke of him this way in private. But the boat maiden was right about Yue Juntian's fickle nature. If not for the decline of his health in recent years, he would have likely produced a third heir after Zhang Yeshui and Yue Chunqing. The boat maiden's inhibitions had fallen almost completely away as she chattered on while steering the boat. Ah, but it's no wonder old man Yue prefers it here. Lin An is full of beauties, and there are some girls who really are stunningly gorgeous. I've seen them plenty of times washing vegetables and silk down by the water. They were lovely, only a little less beautiful than me. Damn. Moshi felt his head begin to ache at these words, but Gumong was wholly unperturbed. He took a few more bites of the dried fish and said, Miss, you're really pretty. The boat maiden was elated, beaming as she returned the compliment in a flirtatious tone. Xiaoge, You're pretty dashing yourself. Gumong turned to Moshi. What does dashing mean? It also means you're pretty. Gumong nodded and told Moshi, then you're the dashingest on the boat. For a while, Moshi couldn't muster a response, yet he couldn't just leave it be. He turned away, gazing at the glimmering river split by the reeds, and coughed lightly. As they neared Linan City, the number of boats on the river increased visibly. A canal city was, after all, different from the capital. Vessels and oars were everywhere, with elegant women washing silks, fishermen singing at dusk, and the residents who made homes along the river swimming in the water. Moshi saw a child no older than 4 splashing happily in the waves like a sharp-bellied fish. Such a strong swimmer, he couldn't help remarking. Of course, the children of families that live along the river learn to swim before they can walk. The boat maiden giggled. Remember to gather all your things before you step off. When you see more fishermen waiting ahead there, we'll have reached the port of Linan. After thanking her, Moshi asked, Miss, you've encountered so many people. Have you ever heard of a reclusive cultivator in the mountains of Linan who knows the rebirth technique? He thought of her innocent and naive, uninterested in immortal techniques or cultivation, and asked as a shot in the dark, without real hope of an answer. Yet unexpectedly, the boat maiden cocked her head. Is that one of the legendary 3 forbidden techniques? Moshi's heart leapt into his throat. Exactly so. Oh, some of my passengers mentioned this legend before. There's supposed to be an expert in the technique outside Linan City. Do you know where exactly? The boat maiden shook her head. That I don't know. My Shifu once said birth, aging, sickness, and death are unavoidable. Could there really be such a technique as rebirth? I thought it sounded too far-fetched and didn't take it seriously. If you're interested, though, why not go into the city and ask a cultivator? That old lordly Yue Juntian came to the fiefdom recently to recover his health and offer sacrifices, accompanied by his family. It'd be better to ask those Yue cultivators instead of me. Her eyes were clear, placid with the easygoing calm only commoners possessed. In truth, she was right. If one lived drifting upon the world's waters, a slow and leisurely life, what need was there to fixate on arcane matters of life and death? But for Moshi and Gumong, this kind of quiet tranquility was something they were doomed to never attain from the moment they were born. At the port, Moshi paid the boat maiden, while Gumong looked longingly at the burlap sacks she'd hung beside the mast. Noting the direction of his gaze, Moshi bought a sack full of little dried fishes from the girl. Only then was Gumong appeased, clutching the sack and chewing as he followed Moshi through the streets of Linan. Steamed cake, lotus cake, osmanthus cake, our cakes take the cake. White magnolia for sale. Such sights were not to be found in the capital and were unlike anything in the garrison at the northern frontier. Gumong's neck craned this way and that. Though he didn't speak, his feet would slow, and he would stand stock still and stare when he saw aught he liked. In no time, Moshi's Qiankun pouch was filled with a baffling assortment of trinkets. From bamboo dragonflies to little clay figurines, tiny porcelain cups, and delicate silk fans, a great heap all jangling and clinking together. Moshi had originally planned to make straight for the Yue clan's Linan residence to pay them a call, but seeing the light beginning to go, he changed course and turned to Gumong. We'll get a room at an inn first, and I'll take you out for dinner. How does that sound? Gumong had a sugar-lacquered tonghulu berry dangling from his mouth. He nodded. The 2 of them found an inn by the river. They had come at the end of the lotus's bloom. The inn's windows opened to an endless sea of jade-green lotus leaves. Dragonflies zipped over lush flowers, and seed pods arched over the water on graceful stems. Moshi left the eclectic pile of items in the room, then led Gumong downstairs to question the inn staff. One of the servers was wiping down tables in the hall. Upon seeing Moshi, he bowed and offered his greetings. "Could I trouble you with the question?" asked Moshi. "Which restaurant serves the best food in Lin'an?" The server was a discerning man. Seeing that their robes, though subtle in design, were of the finest quality, he put on a broad smile. "Ayo, honored guests. I'll be frank. The tastiest might not be the most expensive. Some of the noisy street stalls make the best fried dishes, but I worry the two honored guests might not enjoy the experience." Moshi turned to Gumong. "Do you want to go somewhere with good food, or somewhere nice to sit?" Gumong was straightforward. "Can't it be both?" Moshi looked a question at the server. "If you want the place to be nice and the food to be good, you'll have to compromise," the server answered. "Once you leave the inn, turn left and cross 3 big streets. You'll see a tailor's shop. Jiuxiang Restaurant is in the second alley to the left. There's 2 floors, nice and roomy. The dishes aren't the best in the city, but they're up there." After a pause, he chuckled. "The owner used to be a boat trader, so they've got delicacies from all Jiangnan's major cities. Their crystal shrimp balls and sweet and sour mandarin fish are the highlight. Oh, and don't forget about their pear blossom white wine. The fragrance is exceptional. They make the best wine in Lin'an City." "Do you want to go there?" Moshi asked Gumong. Gumong still hadn't put down his sack of little dried fishes. He nodded, chewing on a tail. The two thanked the server and found the restaurant without much trouble. The establishment was a large one, with a more open and spacious atmosphere than other restaurants, likely because the location was slightly off the beaten path and the rent was lower. They asked for a table on the second floor, ordering the recommended specialties as well as other small dishes, plus a jug of wine and some desserts. The food arrived quickly. The shrimp balls were pale and lustrous, each tidy parcel of plump shrimp gleaming translucent on a white porcelain plate spread with green lotus leaves. The sweet and sour mandarin fish, velveted in starch, was bright and savory. A poke of the chopsticks revealed tender flakes of luxuriant white fish. When dipped in the sugar and vinegar sauce, sprinkled with minced ginger, it was indisputably delicious. The pork in garlic sauce was also a house special, with 3 layers of pork belly first boiled, then sliced, thinner than a cicada's wing. The slivers were then frozen in an ice chest, such that they emanated wisps of cold vapor upon being set upon the table, the unctuous fattiness of the pork completely locked away. Can I just say, 1, meat bun, food descriptions. 2, I love the word unctuous. But when dipped into light soy sauce and peppercorn salt, the flavor was cool and refreshing, each layer of meat and fat clearly defined. Even the selection of stir-fries was delectable. The fried pork kidneys were neatly curled into pretty rolls, and seemed to cling to the sparks of the stove even as they were brought up. The tender bamboo shoots were crisp and tasty, and the jade green vegetable soup was palate cleansing, serving as an extraordinary appetizer. Moshi noticed that Gumong especially liked the shrimp balls. In no time at all, he'd nearly emptied the plate. Moshi thought to catch a waiter's attention to order another, but as he turned his head to flag down a server from the restaurant's lower level, he saw, on the first floor, a familiar figure. He wore robes of white, his expression cold and solemn as he spoke to the owner. Murong Chuyi? Moshi froze in astonishment at the coincidence. But now that he thought of it, Murong Chuyi had come to the fiefdom of Lin'an with the Yue clan. He might not be spending all his time with Yue Juntian and the rest, but what was he doing out here alone in the city's alleys? That's the end of the chapter. We are on chapter 163, which is called The Chu Clan's Past. Okay. Murong Chuyi looked deeply upset. He had always been a graceful person with the aloof bearing of an immortal. Rarely did his features reveal any sign of excessive emotion. Even when he'd argued with Yue Chunqing on Bat Island and stormed off in a rage, his emotions hadn't shown on his face. Yet at this moment, Murong Chuyi was like a frozen lake at the start of spring. Things he had once sealed in ice could no longer be hidden beneath the surface. Despite the distance between him below and where Moshi and Gumong sat above, his agitation was plain. What? You're asking about a family that lived at the dock more than 30 years ago. The owner had a prosperously large gut and fingers that never stopped clacking away on his abacus. Engrossed in calculating his income, he mumbled absently, I was a boat trader once, but so many families lived near the port of Lin'an, at least 80, if not 100. How could I remember each and every one? The family had the surname Chu. There are plenty surnamed Chu, the shopkeeper grumbled. That's a common surname in Lin'an. A family called Chu from more than 30 years ago. Moshi thought it over and recalled. Yue Chunqing had mentioned during the Dragon Boat Festival that, in recent years, it seemed Murong Chuyi wanted to find his birth family. But he had so few clues to work from. He knew only that Murong Huang had found him in front of a temple, with a scrap of paper tucked in his swaddling clothes, the word Chu inscribed crookedly within. Beyond this, he had nothing else. I have a question. Does anyone remember if we were told that before? Were we told that the word Chu was inscribed in this paper that was tucked into his swaddling clothes? Okay. Men of the Murong line were customarily given single character names, while the women had character pairs. But Murong Huang had been frail in her youth, and the fortune teller proclaimed she would have a better chance of survival with a boy's name. To this end, the emperor granted an exception to this branch of the family, and Murong Huang was named thusly. Murong Huang had always felt double character names were prettier, and after she took in this foundling, she included in his name the Chu his family had left for him, Murong Chuyi. Okay. Evidently, Murong Chuyi had learned more clues about his origins and come to this restaurant to ask the owner about these old events. Undeterred by the owner's dismissal, he took a golden cowrie from his Tiankun pouch and pushed it forward with 2 fingers, just shy of the shopkeeper's hand. Could you think a little harder? As soon as he saw that golden cowrie, the shopkeeper's pudgy hand stilled on the abacus. Scooping up the money, he looked up with a smile. Good sir, you're far too generous. To be honest. His smile froze the instant he saw Murong Chuyi's face. What is it? Asked Murong Chuyi. Some sheet of bedrock seemed to shake open in the depths of the owner's memory. He stared at Murong Chuyi in a daze, his expression one of wide-eyed bewilderment. He gasped, It's you. Then quickly shook his head. No, no, no. Is it her? He scrubbed at his face. No, are you her? The shopkeeper rambled in incoherent confusion, but Murong Chuyi seemed to have understood nevertheless. He stepped forward and grabbed the man's arm, his phoenix eyes flashing. Sorry to pause here, but I also want to confirm I'm remembering right. The woman who turned out to be Gumong's mother, wasn't she originally a Chu? Am I remembering that right? Yeah, so Gumong and Murong Chuyi would be kind of related because of the Chu family. Okay. Okay. So I want to like, I hate to like pause right here. Not like I'm not actually going anywhere, but I was not exactly spoiled for this, but kind of. There was kind of a spoiler, and it was in the glossary of these books. In book one, after I finished reading volume one, I just looked at like the names in the glossary, and I glanced at Murong Chuyi, or maybe it was book two. Actually, it might have been book two, because I forget if Murong Chuyi is really in the book one glossary. But either way, before we knew any of this, I looked in the glossary of book whatever, early volume, at Murong Chuyi's name, and it had like two surnames. It was like Murong, and then it also said surname Chu. And I was like, I don't think I was supposed to see that. And I just like closed it. I closed it and I said, okay, never mind. Because the thing is, they tell you that the glossary might have spoilers, but I assume that's spoilers for the volume that it's in, not spoilers for future volumes. That should be something that's not in the glossary until they like reveal that in the book. Like it could be in the glossary in this one, but like earlier ones. And so at some point I forget who, but I told somebody to not look at like the names in the glossary because there might be spoilers. And that is why. So I haven't exactly known how this was like going. Like I didn't know how he was going to be part of the Chu family or any details like that. But I just was like, he's literally a Chu. Okay, then. So now we know. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. He stepped forward and grabbed the man's arm, his phoenix eyes flashing. You know something, said Murong Chuyi. Something about what happened more than 30 years ago at the port of Lin'an. The restaurant owner looked as if he was dreaming. Only after a long moment did he recover his senses. Feeling the curious gazes of the customers and workers all around him, he retrieved a handkerchief and wiped his flabby face with his trembling hands. Xianzhang, first, follow me upstairs. I'll organize my thoughts. And then I'll tell you when we sit down. The two walked toward the stairs. Gumong saw that Moshi's sword-like brows were knit and followed his line of sight. Do you know that dashing man in white? Having just learned the word dashing from the boat maiden, he put it to immediate use for the beautiful Murong Chuyi. I do, said Moshi. So did you, but you've forgotten. Oh, should I go say hello? Moshi grabbed his wrist to pull him back and shook his head. He has his own private matters to attend to. Besides, neither of us are very close to him. Greeting him now will be awkward, Moshi said softly. You should finish your dinner. The sound of footsteps came up the staircase. The shopkeeper led Murong Chuyi into a private room. Though Moshi and Gumong couldn't see them, the sound of their voices grew clearer and clearer as they took a seat just on the other side of the wall. Porcelain clinked, followed by the soft sounds of pouring tea. The owner's weak voice drifted out from behind the bamboo screen. If I might be so bold as to ask, when were you born, sir? Murong Chuyi told him his birth year. The owner murmured it again and again, as if making a mental calculation, then sighed. Might it really be as she said back then? Though his voice was smooth as rain-soaked jade, the emotion in it seemed like flowing magma. If you know something, why not speak? I can't be certain, but with your looks. As the owner spoke, he heaved another sigh. All right, I'll just tell you what I know. It is indeed an old affair from more than 3 decades ago. He began slowly, his voice wandering as if lost in thought. More than 30 years ago, I came to the canals of Lin'an to trade. I was poor back then. I never knew where my next meal would come from. Sometimes, when the hunger became too much, I'd pick up pieces of pastry or bites of steamed bun people had tossed on the ground. One day, as I was picking up scraps of steamed buns on the dock, The boss of a little restaurant on the riverbank spotted me. He was a kind man. He let me sit in his shop for a while and cooked me a bowl of fried rice with some seaweed and dried shrimp soup. That old man had 2 daughters and a son working in his shop, helping him run the business. His eldest daughter fried the rice, I still remember. She put in a spoonful of lard and a big ladle of soy sauce. It was a big bowl, filled to the brim, fragrant and steaming. When I was strapped for cash, I'd go there often to eat. But it wasn't like I was freeloading. After I ate, I'd help their family with whatever they needed around the shop. They heard the muffled sounds of tea being sipped. The owner took a few gulps, steadied himself, and went on. The family was named Chu. All of them were very kind. The youngest, the boy, was still little, but those 2 sisters were the most renowned beauties in Lin'an. As soon as they reached 15, no few wealthy merchant lords came knocking to propose marriage. But their papa adored them. Those merchants would never take his girls as their first wives because of their low status, and the old man refused to marry them off as concubines. He'd rather let them choose their husbands than be hastily wed to a rich man. Unmarried maidens celebrated for the beauty naturally draw the greed of others. The sisters' reputations grew and grew, and their prospective suitors became harder and harder to turn away. In the end, some overbearing noble lords came. When playing nice didn't work, they took the maidens by force. And then, the shopkeeper let out a heavy sigh. In truth, I didn't see what happened with my own eyes. I started working in shipping around that time and had spent a month in Chuanzhou doing business. By the time I returned, the Chu family's restaurant had been burnt to ash. Murong Chuyi tensed. I asked the neighbors what had happened, but they were evasive, too afraid to say much. I was so young back then, so furious and overcome by grief. I rushed over to the magistrate's office and reported it. The governor told me that because the Chu family couldn't handle that crowd of suitors, they had left Lin'an. Murong Chuyi's low, cool voice contained an audible note of fury. Why would they burn down their house if they were moving away? That's what I thought too, the owner agreed. It was obvious that the officials were lying to me. The Chu family had shown me so much kindness, I couldn't let it go without knowing the truth. I sought out clues in Lin'an City and asked around. But then, oh, is there a delay? Is the signal okay? Or is the audio being weird? It looks like I have a good signal. Right now, stream health, it says it's excellent. Okay. It looks okay. Nina, I'm sorry you're having a delay. I don't know if maybe if you refresh or something, it might get better. YouTube is funny like that. What happened then? Despite the decades that had passed, when dredging up these old memories, the shopkeeper seemed agonized. His voice shook, and he took many more sips of tea. Finally, he lowered his voice. Then, I went on the search myself. Finally, on the outskirts of Lin'an City, I found the Chu patriarch's body, decapitated in a haystack. At this point, the man began shivering, the rims of his eyes red. He did not dare, nor did he want, to describe the specifics of what he'd found that day. After a turn or more, he continued. I was terrified and heartbroken. As I wept, I suddenly heard there were faint sounds coming from the depths of the haystack. I crawled over to look and found the family's son hiding in the hay, looking at me like a lost kitten covered in blood. Listening to the tale, Moshi was incensed. At the same moment, the crash of breaking porcelain carried through the bamboo screen. The owner cried out, "Xianzhang, you..." In his fury, it seemed Murong Chuyi had accidentally shattered the teacup in his hand. Your hand is bleeding. It's nothing, Murong Chuyi replied tonelessly. Silk rustled. Perhaps he'd produced a handkerchief to wipe the blood. Moments later, he instructed in a low voice, "Keep talking." The owner acquiesced, eyes red-rimmed. It had been many years since he'd thought about these events. His emotions surged as he recalled them. The boy was too young. He couldn't answer any of my questions coherently. When I asked him where his sisters went, all he did was cry. I buried the Chu patriarch. I took the child away and brought him up on my boat. At that point, he wasn't old enough to remember what had happened. I wanted him to live a peaceful life, so I never mentioned his family's fate, in hopes he could grow up without feeling the need to seek vengeance. Years passed. Eventually, the child, who could barely speak at the time, no longer remembered this event. Everyone in the city gradually forgot the Chu family too, until one day, he paused. The eldest daughter returned. The owner sighed again, but she was completely unrecognizable. Her hair was a tangle, and her face was dirty. She'd gone mad. She told anyone who would listen that she had a child, but she'd abandoned the babe in a moment of confusion. People would ask her, "What child? Who's the father?" But she couldn't answer. When they asked where her sister had gone, she only wept. "Don't blame me," she would cry. "I had to." The owner pulled out his handkerchief, blew his nose, and lamented. When the local officials heard, they took her in for questioning. But after they confirmed she'd suffered some significant psychological blow and was unlikely to recover her senses, they stopped bothering with her. The townsfolk found her pitiable and gave her an abandoned little house to live in. At first, many went to visit her, but they slowly realized she was only capable of saying those same mad things. Once they tired of her, no one was willing to pay her any attention. I did bring her little brother to see her, but he didn't recognize or remember her. As soon as she saw him, she began sobbing, saying she shouldn't have been so cruel to abandon her own baby, that no matter how much hate she felt, she shouldn't have blamed the child. She said she saw the little boy become a ghost, sitting in a pool of blood, staring at her. Though there wasn't any evidence, I'd put the pieces together well enough. The Chu family hadn't moved away at all. Rather, some wealthy noble from the capital must have taken a liking to the daughters and snatched those two maidens away. Perhaps their father had tried to protect them and was brutally murdered, while the little son was tossed in the pile of straw and left for dead. The shopkeeper fell into a long, dazed silence. The elder Miss Chu kept saying she had a child, begging her sister not to blame her, crying that she had her own difficulties. Eventually, everyone began to think she'd done something she shouldn't to stay alive, that she killed her own sister. They thought this was why only the elder Miss Chu returned, while the younger Miss Chu had vanished without a trace. Murong Chuyi's expression darkened, as if he was unwilling to accept this as the truth. Based on these speculations, the townsfolk ostracized her, mocked her, and took advantage of her madness. Back then, I didn't stop them because I didn't know either. It was always the younger Miss Chu who was warm and sweet to me. Her elder sister was a quiet girl. I thought she might really have done something terrible to her sister, only to be driven insane by the guilt that gnawed at her. It wasn't until the end of her life that I learned. Stunned, Murong Chuyi cut in, his voice hoarse. "What? She's already gone?" "This was quite a while ago," the shopkeeper said ruefully. "I went to see her off when the time came. Perhaps it was a final flash of lucidity. She had a few moments of clarity right at the end. She told me." The owner stopped for a moment, as if weighing whether to tell him these final, most closely held secrets. At last, perhaps because he was looking at Murong Chuyi, whose face was so similar to the woman he'd once known, he finally spoke. "She told me that when she and her sister were taken by that noble, she knew she couldn't escape. She pretended to be docile, undressing and serving him without complaint, coaxing him into letting down his guard. Finally, she found an opportunity to set her sister free. But her sister thought her mask of obedience was real. She thought her sister had forgotten the need to avenge their father's death and willingly gave her body to their captor to preserve her own life. Thus, her younger sister despised her. She said she'd rather die than accept this favor from her. That was when I finally knew all the townsfolk had been mistaken the elder Miss Chu. She hadn't killed her sister to live at all. When she said I had to, she meant. She had urged the younger Miss Chu to run, but her sister rejected and misunderstood her. They were living in the imperial capital, surrounded by terrifyingly powerful noble houses. The elder Miss Chu worried about how far her little sister could get, even if she listened to her and fled. The elder Miss Chu racked her brain over days and nights. In the end, she came up with an idea. She'd met quite a few young lords when she was serving that noble, and her final plan was to set up a scheme. She would get one of them to take in her sister. To give the younger Miss Chu a better life, to spare her suffering and disgrace, she watched those nobles carefully. She considered who might warmly accept an orphaned girl. That noble had to be kind, righteous, and notable, with a sufficiently powerful position. In the end, she narrowed it down to 2. Who? Murong Chuyi asked. Fu Lingjun, Mo Qingqi. Wait. Yeah, Fu Lingjun, Mo Qingqi, and the late Wang Shu, Murong Xuan. Caught entirely off guard, Mo Shi's phoenix eyes flew wide. Are we finding out about wait, no, never mind. Never mind. No, well, I don't know, but that's a lot. That's the end of the chapter. And I'm gonna take a 5 to 10 minute break, and when we come back, we will be on page 45 for chapter 164, which is called We Aren't Alone. I'm processing. I'm processing things. Ah. Well, yeah, I will see y'all in just a little bit. Hello. I am back. We are back. Blue Murong Chuyi is your wife. um, I love the little thing about how in this family, the women usually had like a two-character name, and then the men would have a one-character name. But then Murong Huang was like the exception, and then she decided to give a two-character name to Murong Chuyi, and that just something about that, and like the way that like we have the little thing that happened where Gumong was like, oh, like a beautiful fairy, and like called him princess, or not princess. No, he didn't call him princess. He called him something. Did he call him princess? Anyway, he called him something feminine, and it's just kind of funny that like he has that naming convention. It's just the beautiful maiden, dragon lady. Okay, yes. I was like, it's not, it's not princess, but yeah, it's just the little details that Meat Bun slips in. Dragon lady. I love it. I love it so much. So we're on page 45 for chapter 164. We aren't alone. I'm sure they're not going to run into each other. I'm sure. No, not at all. Moshi hadn't expected to hear his father mentioned in this recounting of past events. For a moment, he couldn't say what it was that he felt. After painstakingly asking around, the owner continued. The elder Miss Chu learned Mo Qingqi had a wife. Mo Qingchi had a wife with a jealous temperament. Thus, she pinned all her hopes on the unattached Murong Xuan. But, Murong Chuyi said softly, if that younger Miss Chu was so strong-willed, why would she go along with her elder sister's plans for her? If she learned all of her elder sister's planning and suffering had been for her sake, how could she be willing to escape into a life of ease? Precisely, the shopkeeper replied. So the elder Miss Chu's plan was to not let her sister know at all. She hoped her sister could live the rest of her life happily and without pain. One day, when all the nobles of the city went out to hunt on the outskirts of the capital with their entourage, she made sure her sister was by her side. While her sister was distracted, the elder Miss Chu put some filched memory-erasing powder into her water. When the youngest Miss Chu drank the memory-erasing powder, she fell unconscious. The elder Miss Chu secretly carried her to a path she knew Murong Xuan would cross. Murong Xuan saw a solitary woman on the verge of death, piteous and helpless. Of course he felt compassion. He ordered his men to save her. Now that she had accomplished this, however, the elder Miss Chu knew all of her previous fawning and flattery would be seen through. She risked everything and fled in the night. But she hadn't gotten far before the noble who seized her discovered what she'd done and flew into a rage. He sent people after her. In the course of her desperate flight, Miss Chu fell down a steep hill and landed in the abyss of 5 poisons. What the heck is that? That fog-filled gully in the eastern outskirts of the capital, Murong Chuyi muttered. That's right. By the time Miss Chu climbed out, she had inhaled too much of the poisonous miasma. Her mind was beginning to deteriorate. But Xianzhang, you should know that the effects of that type of poison fog aren't all immediate. It becomes worse and worse as the days go on. While Miss Chu still had some awareness, she hoped she might return to her papa and little brother in Lin'an, and attempted the journey. But by the time she reached a populated area and asked around, the news she received sank her into despair. She grew madder by the day, and when she discovered she was pregnant with that noble's flesh and blood, she broke down completely. But wait, which noble is this? Wait, are you going to tell us which noble this is? The room was terrifyingly quiet. By now, even Moshi had realized that Murong Chuyi was the child of Miss Chu and that nobleman who had forced himself on her. Gazing at Moshi, Gumong asked in a low voice, "Why do you look like that?" Moshi shook his head. He didn't wish to hear any more. If he could, he would have taken Gumong and left. But making their exit now would likely attract Murong Chuyi's notice, and Moshi hadn't the faintest idea of how to face him at that moment. I know we don't know yet. That's why I'm yelling at Meat Bun. Within this nerve-wracking silence, Murong Chuyi asked, his voice flat, "Why didn't she abort the child?" "I can't tell you why," the owner said. "I'm not sure she could have said what she was thinking either, but, love and hate are never so straightforward. Isn't it said there's but a moment's difference between a saint and a sinner? My own guess is that she struggled a long while to decide whether she should keep the child. So long that it was too late to end the pregnancy. Perhaps that's why she later left the infant at the gates of a temple." Murong Chuyi closed his eyes. Before her death, Miss Chu told me again and again how she'd hidden in the forest and watched as a finely dressed woman brought her baby away. She'd felt immensely relieved, but also heartbroken. When the pain became unbearable, she began to regret her choice. She wanted to chase after the woman and claim her child, but the noble lady had already left in her carriage. Miss Chu couldn't catch up no matter how she tried, and no one would listen no matter how she shouted. That was the last straw that destroyed her. That night, she went completely insane. At this point, the owner's eyes went distant. It was a moment before he was able to continue the story. As for that youngest son of the Chu family, that boy grew up working for me on my boat. Later, when I got on in years and wanted to live a steadier life, I came to Lin'an and opened this restaurant. But he'd fallen in love with the water. He's still trading on the river to this day, doing the same job I taught him. I never told him the details about what happened in his youth. Murong Chuyi's voice came out as a rasp, slow and deep. How is he doing now? He has a wife and kids. He's living a peaceful life. He says he wants to work hard while he's young and put some money away. In a few years, he'll bring his wife and kids back to Lin'an to start up a business so his kids can focus on their studies. After a silence, Murong Chuyi spoke again. That's good to hear. Sir, do you know which noble kidnapped the Chu sisters? The owner's expression changed. His pudgy lips opened and closed on a stammer, though he hadn't mentioned the man's identity during his retelling. He obviously knew who he was. But reminiscing over a rumor was one thing. Naming names and exposing that man for a monster was another matter entirely. Everyone had their own sense of right and wrong. Some people could only go so far for justice. They hadn't the courage for more. Still, what they were willing to give counted as kindness. It wouldn't do to press further. Murong Chuyi was only too aware of this reasoning, and anyhow, he didn't need confirmation of his suspicions. He already had an answer in mind. Who else could it be? Even Moshi, never one to involve himself in other people's business, could guess the identity of that beast with ease. I'm sure it is Yue Gentian. But see, I'm scared. Murong Chuyi noted the owner's expression and didn't insist. I understand. Thank you, sir. No, not at all. There's nothing to thank me for. There was a beat of silence. Then the two spoke almost at the same time. Sir, could you please answer one more question? Xianzhang, could I be so bold as to ask one last thing? Murong Chuyi said, Go ahead. The restaurant owner began, hesitant. You wouldn't really be Miss Chu's child from back then, right? There was no reply. Never mind, the shopkeeper hastily amended. Pretend I didn't say anything, pretend I didn't say anything. Back to your question. What did you want to ask me? Murong Chuyi was quiet a moment. My question was, in this area of Linnan Prefecture, are there many families who tattoo newborn children with a symbol on their shoulder? Hearing this, Moshi froze. Oh, the people along the river have always liked their tattoos. There is an old custom like that, but not everyone follows it. The shopkeeper continued. Actually, the practice goes way back to their ancestors. I'm not sure of the exact details, but I heard that long ago, the ancestors of some of these families worshipped flower deities. They chose a type of flower as their family's symbol for warding off evil, and asked a famous cultivator to leave a mark on their arm. For example, the ones that worshipped herbaceous peonies got an herbaceous peony-shaped mark, while those who worshipped tree peonies got a tree peony-shaped mark. That's doesn't Gumong have some sort of mysterious symbol on him? Doesn't he have a flower on him somewhere, or am I forgetting? Am I remembering wrong? The more Moshi heard, the worse his expression became. By this point, his face was almost white. See, I remember something about this, and I think it's some kind of peony. I don't think it's a high tongue. But then we have later down the line, I don't know, I just, ugh. The famous cultivator who made these marks back then used a very potent technique. Not only were those devoted believers marked with sigils, the flowers were even passed down to their children, who were born with the same birthmark. But the enchantment is ancient. Each family's marks have slowly faded down the years. The weaker ones are no longer visible. In a few more generations, I think all the birthmarks will be gone. So it's like a tattoo that's passed on. And of course that means by the time you get to Arha, they don't have them anymore. Murong Chuyi spoke again. Then that family surnamed Chu. Did they also inherit and pass down a mark? The shopkeeper thought for a moment. Yes. Oh, that's right. And now I remember. The atmosphere was terrifyingly strained. What was it? A lotus flower. Thunder seemed to rumble through Moshi's head. He felt a vertiginous rush as his vision went dark in bursts. He looked up through the restaurant's flickering candlelight and gazed into Gumong's totally oblivious face. Lotus flower. A lotus flower. Snatches of past conversation seemed to flit through Moshi's head like a carousel lantern. The rumors about the late Wangshu and a maiden from Lin'an. The lifelong conflict between Gumong and Murong Lian. The faint resemblance between Murong Chuyi and Gumong. In the end, a refined and measured voice echoed from his memories. Zhang Fuli's words from not so long ago, when he was treating Gumong's wounds. This petal-shaped mark on his shoulder. Why do I feel I've seen one just like this, but on a different patient? It had been on Murong Chuyi. He must have seen Zhang Fuli for an illness at some point, and Zhang Fuli had noticed the birthmark on his shoulder. Moshi felt cold surging from the depths of his bones. The truth seemed to be an ocean pouring out into the world, inundating Moshi until he could scarcely breathe. He buried his face in his palms as goose flesh rose over his back. Murong Lian, Murong Chuyi, the late Wangshu, the Chu sisters, Gumong, and that servant woman Gumong had once mentioned, the one Moshi hadn't paid much notice to at the time, Auntie Lin. I'm glad he's thoughtful enough to put this together. I thought it was going to be longer before he figured this out. This one thread wound through all the tangled relationships among all these people, dragging the truth to the surface. Their connections gradually became clear, but it was a terrifying clarity. Moshi's entire body was as cold as if it had been submerged in icy water. Moshi? Moshi. He didn't know how much time had passed when Gumong's worried voice yanked him from his thoughts. Moshi blinked and looked toward Gumong's pretty face in the candlelight. Moshi had been preoccupied so long that Murong Chuyi had already taken his leave of the room next door. The owner had also made his way downstairs and was now welcoming guests once again with his portly belly and a newly rearranged smile. It was as if Moshi had dreamed it all, but he knew it wasn't so. All of it was real. In the time mirror, he'd watched Gumong and Lu Jianxing's final farewell. Gumong had yearned so deeply not to be alone, to have a brother to keep him company. He remembered, too, something Yue Chunqing had once said, that Murong Chuyi had been alone since he was an infant abandoned at the temple. He'd never known his family or whether they were still alive. Between the two of them, one was cold and one was warm. One had hoped fervently. One had sought in silence. They seemed to have nothing in common, but as it turned out, trembling, Moshi closed his eyes. Moshi, what's wrong? Nothing, Moshi replied in a rasp. It was impossible to say whether the emotion roughening his voice was sorrow or joy. The joy was self-evident. As for the sorrow, in Gumong's current state, how could he endure the shock of learning about his family and come to acknowledge a brother? Not to mention, when he looked at it from another light, Gumong would be saddled with the rotten accounts of both the Yue and the Murong clans. Moshi's emotions were in turmoil. He was unsure of what to say. He patted Gumong on the head and asked, If you still had kin in the world, would you be happy? What's kin? Gumong asked. They're the people closest to you. Then there's only you. What if there was someone else? But there's no one closer to me. Gumong widened his eyes. If there was, why haven't they come to find me? Moshi paused. He will. They returned to the inn, but Moshi wasn't tired. He stood before the window, gazing at the round disk of the early rising moon and the frost on the eaves of the houses, countless questions running through his mind. The noble who had done those despicable things to the Chu sisters was almost certainly Yue Juntian. Given Murong Chuyi's temperament, Moshi didn't know what action he would take, but the result was sure to be devastating to both the Yue clan and Murong Chuyi. If he wished to stop Murong Chuyi from taking the desperate risk of revenge, the best choice would be to tell him he still had a brother of his own blood in this world, and that this brother needed him. He didn't know Murong Chuyi well, but even he could see Murong Chuyi, like Gumong, wanted badly to know what it was to have a home. Between the cold satisfaction of revenge and lasting warmth, he trusted Murong Chuyi would choose the latter. In truth, that would be better for all of them. Moshi. Moshi turned his head at his name, but found it was nothing more than Gumong murmuring in his sleep. He was already curled up in the bed, the thin blanket pulled so high a scant sliver of his face was visible. He was dreaming, his brow furrowed. Padding over, Moshi sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and gently brushed away the untidy wisps of hair around Gumong's face. Despite the slightness of his movements, Gumong sleepily opened his eyes. Moshi kept his voice quiet, soft, and gentle, very low. Did I wake you? Gumong shook his head muzzily. After a moment, he mumbled, his clear blue eyes heavy-lidded. Do I really have a big brother, too? After a pause, Moshi hummed in assent. Will he really come to find me? He will. Will he like me? Of course he will. Gumong hummed softly, the wrinkle in his brow slowly smoothing away. A touch of relief and anticipation appeared on his features. In the dimming light, Moshi sat next to Gumong, watching him as he slept soundly, still thinking things over. The minutes dripped by. At last, Moshi tucked the thin blanket more tightly around him. He rose and left the inn in silence, walking toward the graveyard on the city's outskirts. See, that's kind of a cool chapter title. We aren't alone, because I thought they were going to run into Murong Chuyi. I keep wanting to say Chuwaning. I thought they were going to run into him, like, accidentally on the way out, but they didn't. But instead, it's, we aren't alone, as in, like, there's someone in Gumong's family, like, he and Murong Chuyi aren't alone in that way. I can't with me fun. We're on chapter 165, which is called Graveyard Meeting. At dusk, the crows cawed in the withered trees. A man in robes like snow stood before one of the stooped little limestone plaques in the graveyard on the outskirts of Lin'an. Hardly anybody had bothered to clean the gravestone, and it was covered in a thick layer of grime. The text on it had been carved shallowly. The writing at the bottom was almost too worn to read. Murong Chuyi regarded it in silence. The restaurant owner had kindly erected this stone plaque for his deceased friend. It bore no epitaphs like caring mother or beloved wife. Only 3 simple words were carved on top. Chu Lian's grave. He had found it by following the owner's instructions. After all the twists and turns in his 30-some years of life, he was finally meeting his birth mother for the first time. Once, he had resented his mother's coldness in abandoning him at the temple. He had borne a grudge. He hadn't understood what she'd gone through to make her so cruel. But he hadn't known the truth of it. Murong Chuyi knelt slowly before Chu Lian's gravestone, fingertips brushing the light dust covering the stone plaque. He thought to call her mother, but as his lips moved, he found he could make no sound. In more than 3 decades, he'd never called anyone mother. Now there was suddenly a grave that he could address by this name, but he could no longer say it easily. Such a simple word, yet it stuck in his throat like a sharp fishbone, pricking out a cutting ache. He could not speak no matter what. He gathered himself for a moment, closing his eyes. Spiritual energy flared at his fingertips. Little by little, he traced over the 3 words. Stone dust whispered as it fell away, and the shallow markings on the gravestone became deep once more, as if every line and stroke was carving itself into his heart. Chu Lian's grave. So that was her name. Next to Chu Lian's gravestone was an older plaque, the one without a name. It was the grave the owner had erected for the murdered Chu patriarch, out of gratitude for the meal he'd once freely given. The owner, afraid the officials would find out what he'd done, did not even dare inscribe it, only carving a small lotus flower on the stone. Murong Chuyi lifted a hand to touch his own upper left arm through his pristine white clothes. He had always wished for a home. These 2 gravestones in this dark cemetery were the result of his arduous search. It was so terribly cold. Of course, the thought of seeking out the boy who survived had crossed his mind. But upon hearing that he was surrounded by his wife and children, with a full and blissful life, Murong Chuyi felt it would be incredibly awkward if he suddenly inserted himself, just as it always was with the Yue clan. That person's life was already complete. There was no need for him to mar it with an unnecessary brushstroke. He remained kneeling before the gravestone. His emotions, usually so clear-cut, were a chaotic roil. Hatred, resentment, dissatisfaction, disappointment, pain. His heart was near to bursting with these feelings. He couldn't think clearly about anything. In the end, he merely sat in shock. The moon was bright, and the stars were scattered and few. Crows called out from the desolate branches. He reached up to touch his mother again. All he felt beneath his fingers was that icy gravestone, cold, like the home he'd found. The Chu family hadn't moved away at all. Rather, some wealthy noble from the capital must have taken a liking to the daughters and snatched those two maidens away. Perhaps their father had tried to protect them and was brutally murdered, while the little son was tossed in the pile of straw and left for dead. In the course of her desperate flight, Miss Chu fell down the slope and landed in the abyss of 5 poisons. In the outskirts of Lin'an City, I found the Chu patriarch's body decapitated. The words of the tale from earlier seemed to echo in his ears like a curse. Hatred welled up in his breast, and he rose, a ball of flaming light coalescing in his palm. Without warning, the soft press of footsteps sounded behind him. The newcomer stopped a few paces away and called in a low, steady voice, "Murong Xiansheng." Murong Chuyi turned, eyes sharp and voice fierce. "Who goes there?" Moshi stood between 2 rows of gravestones, gazing at him from a respectful distance. Narrowing his eyes, Murong Chuyi asked, "What are you doing here?" "Earlier this evening, I happened to be at Zhouxiang restaurant as well." Murong Chuyi's expression went sharper still. His features were fierce at the best of times. At this moment, he was intensely wary, eyes filled with menace, so that he seemed even more unapproachable than usual. "You overheard." "I overheard." Golden light exploded from Murong Chuyi's palm and transformed into a blade sharp enough to split hairs. Sword-like brows drawn low. He wasted no time on talk before sending a flaming sword glare sweeping toward Moshi with a swipe of his hand. Moshi threw up a barrier and blocked the glare. Golden light clashed with the barrier's red glow. Moshi gazed at Murong Chuyi through the spray of flickering sparks. "Murong, I didn't come to fight you, nor do I consider myself an ally of Yue Zhentian. If I did, there'd be no reason for me to seek you out." Blue, he's definitely a Chu. Murong Chuyi's attack had failed. Sweeping his sleeves, he drew his hand back and brought the sword up in front of him, face showing distrust. "Then what did you come for?" He narrowed his phoenix eyes dangerously. "To plead for mercy on Yue Zhentian's behalf?" Did you not hear what he just said? Okay. "You probably know I've always been at odds with him." Murong Chuyi didn't respond, so Moshi continued. "He and I have served in court together for many years, but I have never joined his faction, nor developed any friendly relationship with him. I've hardly ever spoken to the man. You must be aware of this." Murong Chuyi remained silent, but the hissing spiritual energy radiating from the sword seemed to lessen. After a while, he brought the sword behind him, but his face was still tense as he stared at Moshi. "Yue Zhentian is inept and without morals. He's tyrannized his fiefdom for years, resulting in the destruction and death of many families here. I must settle this debt with him." Moshi nodded. "If I were you, I would do the same." "Then why do you stand in my way?" "If I didn't, would you not go after Yue Zhentian tonight and kill him with your own hands?" "Do I not have this right?" Murong Chuyi snapped. "What justice would your mother or grandfather get if you dealt with your personal grudge like this? Murong, you know the right thing to do is report this to His Imperial Majesty. Yue Zhentian harms the civilians of his fiefdom with his own selfish desires. He's committed great sins, hidden his tracks, and lied to the Emperor. These are severe crimes that His Imperial Majesty will not tolerate." Murong Chuyi glared at him through red-rimmed eyes. So what if he doesn't tolerate them? Will he execute him? Will he take his worthless life? He won't. He'll give him a slap on the wrist, and then this blood debt will be written off. Do you think I haven't considered this? Besides, he said icily, don't speak to me of how His Imperial Majesty will deal with him according to the law. Where was the law when Yue Zhentian raped my mother? Where was the law when he killed my family? The law didn't stop him from doing these things, but now that it's my turn, I must obey it. Is that right? Moshi gazed at him for a long beat. Very well. If you're not willing to listen to me and insist on exacting personal vengeance, go ahead. With that, he moved aside. I won't stop you. But Murong, have you thought through the consequences of what you plan to do? Yue Zhentian will be dead, and you'll have your revenge, but you'll certainly be given the death penalty. Perhaps you think such a sacrifice is worth it, but what about Yue Zhenqing? Yue Zhentian is still his father, no matter how despicable he is, and you have always been the fourth uncle he reveres. You would murder his father, then end up in prison, to be executed when the time comes. What effect do you imagine this will have on Yue Zhenqing? Murong Chuyi's expression darkened slightly. I have never considered Yue Zhenqing my nephew. What does his happiness or unhappiness have to do with me? Is that so? How merciless, Moshi said. Then why did you risk your life to save his on Bat Island? If you settle your personal feud with Yue Zhentian, the Yue clan will fall apart, and Yue Zhenqing will suffer for it. Besides, Here, Moshi paused. Other than Yue Zhenqing, there's someone else who wouldn't want you to spill blood so rashly. Do you mean that surviving son of the Chu family? Murong Chuyi looked up. Then you're wrong. He has a wife and children. His life is going well, and I have no plans to disrupt it. Whether I spill blood or not, whether I kill Yue Zhentian or not, none of it has anything to do with him. No, Moshi said. Someone else. Murong Chuyi looked at him, puzzled. Moshi glanced at the gravestone. Chu Lian's younger sister was rescued by the late Wang Shujun. Though she's no longer with us, she left a child in this world. Your cousin. Murong Chuyi stood frozen for a moment, as if he couldn't comprehend Moshi's words. By the time he processed them, his phoenix eyes had widened. You ought to have heard the old rumors about how the late Wang Shu was in love with the maiden from Lin'an, Moshi continued. Yue Zhentian repeatedly admonished them before the emperor until the two were forced to part. That maiden was none other than Chu Lian's younger sister. She and the late Wang Shu had a child, Murong Chuyi asked in near disbelief. Yes, Moshi replied. Once you know the whole story, it's not hard to imagine why Yue Zhentian worked so hard to malign her and prevent her marriage to the late Wang Shu. Although Chu Lian had given her sister memory-erasing powder, its effects may not have been permanent. Yue Zhentian feared there'd come a day when Chu Lian's sister would regain her memories and reveal everything to the public. With the late Wang Shu at her side supporting her, Yue Zhentian wouldn't find it so easy to scheme and lie his way out of that scenario. Murong Chuyi waited for him to continue. Chu Lian's sister, her child, your cousin, is just like you. He's been alone for more than 30 years. Murong Xiansheng. He needs you. He wants to acknowledge you, too. Under the moonlight, the face of this usually indomitable man was white as paper. Even his thin, pale lips looked bloodless. How did you find out? Murong Chuyi asked. It's hard to explain, but I ask you to believe that I do not lie to you. His shoulder bears the same mark as yours, the same as the one on this gravestone, an identical lotus petal mark. Murong Chuyi's face was ashen. Who is it? Murong Lian? No. It's Gumong. Murong Chuyi's silk shoes shifted as he took an involuntary step back. Him? How could he? How could he? He's not a traitor, nor is he evil. But the reasons behind what happened to him are difficult to explain. The black magic energy in him is growing stronger day by day. If he should receive another destructive blow, he might lose his mind and transform completely. I can support him by remaining by his side, but you're his family by blood. There are some things you can give that I never could. Murong Chuyi's gaze flickered, as if he was suppressing some emotion that was about to break him. A complex expression played over his face. Did he come to Linan with you? Yes, said Moshi. He'd be very happy if you were willing to acknowledge him. Murong, Gumong is different. If you think others don't need you, there's nothing I can say to that. But he needs you. It's been 30 years. Let him call you Ge. Murong Chuyi closed his phoenix eyes. After a while, he raised his head, speaking hoarsely. Shihajun, I've always kept my distance from people. I know nothing about being someone's family. And there's my blood feud with Yue Juntian. So you'd rather lose a brother so you can personally avenge a crime that happened more than 30 years ago? Murong Chuyi pressed his lips into a tight line. After a long silence, he finally relented. I can meet with him, but everyone in the Yue clan is offering sacrifices in Huntian Cave tomorrow. I can see him the day after. Moshi inwardly sighed in relief. Okay, I'll tell him that. Since Murong Chuyi hadn't refused, Moshi ventured. Then, as for Yue Juntian... Rest assured, Murong Chuyi lowered his eyes. Regarding Yue Juntian, I'll deal with him after I see Gumong. That's the end of the chapter. Okay. It's a decently short chapter, I guess. So I'm gonna read chapter 166, and then we'll be done for today. This is chapter 166, Cousin. When Gumong heard the news that he really did have a cousin, and that this man would come see him the day after next, he was surprised and delighted. Such undisguised happiness had rarely appeared on his face since his mind had been damaged. His spirits seemed to have lifted quite a bit. For the rest of the evening, he peppered Moshi with questions. Moshi, what's my cousin like? Moshi wanted to give him something to look forward to, but he didn't want to give away too much. You'll know when you see him. Oh. Sitting in their room at the inn, Gumong played with the bamboo dragonfly for a while. Then, when I see him, he said, turning back to Moshi, what should I say? You can say whatever you want. There are no rules. Well, what do you talk about when you see your cousins? I don't have any cousins. Moshi set down the book he'd been holding and gazed into Gumong's wide blue eyes. You don't have to worry so much, he said. He's your big brother, not your enemy. Gumong seemed to be deeply relieved, but soon after, he looked down at his clothes, ran to the copper mirror to assess himself, then ran back over to Moshi and tugged on his sleeve. Clothes. I want new clothes, so my cousin will be happy when he sees me. Moshi held back a laugh in spite of himself. New clothes? Are you getting ready to propose? What does propose mean? I was joking. Moshi got to his feet. Stay here in the inn and rest. I put up a defensive barrier, so it's safe enough. I'll go out and buy you a new set of clothes. Gumong nodded several times. Moshi departed. He had no trouble picking out clothes for Gumong, for he knew the circumference of Gumong's waist as well as he knew the back of his own hand. Was there a thing like this in Arha too? In no time at all, He was stepping out of the best clothing shop in Lin'an with a tidy paper package. Upon returning to the inn, he passed the package to Gumong. Try it on. See if you like it. The robes were pure white, with subtle cloud patterns picked out in snow silk thread. Their cut was simple and clean, with an ethereal grace. In his army days, Gumong had always preferred to fight hand to hand, and so preferred narrow-sleeved and close-fitting martial robes. After he became a prisoner, he never had the chance to wear nice clothes. This was the first time he'd worn this type of loose-fitting, wide-sleeved cultivator's robe in glimmering silver. He stepped carefully out from behind the screen, afraid he'd tread on his hems if he moved too quickly. He came to a stop in front of Moshi, his blue eyes filled with unease. It feels a little strange. His hair was tied in a loose bun as usual. The soft, dark wisps framing his face made his skin look very pale, and his eyes very clear. Dressed thus, the similarities between him and Murong Chuyi were indeed striking. It looks good on you, Moshi replied gently. You're just not used to it yet. We have art. He looks like a chew. Really? It looks good? Gumong echoed with some astonishment. Moshi smiled. Keep wearing it and you'll adjust. Gumong nodded in delight. Yet after a moment, he ran behind the screen again. When he walked back out, he had changed and was carrying the snow silk robes in both hands. What is it? Moshi was taken aback. You don't like it? I'll get it dirty. Gumong carefully folded the clothes and picked up the brown oil paper packaging on the table. His lashes fluttered as he blew a speck of dust off attentively, packaging the robes back up and patting the bundle solemnly. I'll wear it the day after tomorrow. Even after the demonic energy had ravaged his mind, his yearning for familial closeness was abiding, as though carved into the marrow of his bones. Moshi watched Gumong place the paper-wrapped robes at the head of the bed. A few minutes later, he decided to hide them under his pillow instead. After another few moments, he unearthed the package and examined it again, reaching in to gingerly touch the fabric, an expression of uncertain anticipation coming over his face. He busied himself with this oil paper package for the remainder of the evening, having lost all interest in the bamboo dragonfly and other trinkets they'd purchased earlier. Even when it came time to sleep, Gumong couldn't relax, piping up in a small voice every few minutes. Moshi, does my cousin wear clothes like this too? This style is his favorite. Moshi, is my cousin pretty? Could your cousin be ugly? Moshi, the day after tomorrow is tomorrow's tomorrow. I still have to wait a day. Can't I see him before then? There are some personal things he has to attend to. Once he takes care of them, he'll be able to come see you with his mind at ease. Okay, then tell him to take his time then. No rush. Moshi. Gumong's barrage of questions gradually trailed off. He still wanted to talk about his big brother, but was simply too sleepy to continue. With a yawn, he mumbled Moshi's name one last time and dozed off before he could finish the thought. The next day, Moshi rose early, while Gumong was still curled up in bed. A city's busiest hours were the morning and night markets, and Moshi planned to canvass for information about the legend of the rebirth technique. But though he encountered many citizens during this investigation, none were interested in cultivation. They could tell him which stall had the cheapest tofu or freshest vegetables, but they didn't know anything about an elusive Grandmaster cultivator living near Lin'an City. Moshi was unsurprised by this result. If that hidden cultivator were so easily found, he wouldn't be considered hidden. He uncovered no clues about the rebirth technique, but an enthusiastic old lady did tell him which stall had the best breakfast, so Moshi went. By the time he arrived, a bustling crowd had already gathered. He found a seat in a corner and called to a server with a white handkerchief draped over his shoulder. "One each of your specialty breakfast items, please." "Alrighty," the server cheerfully answered. Moshi's method of ordering might have sounded wasteful, but it wasn't really. Breakfast stalls could only sell so many items, and one of each wasn't too much for a grown man who hadn't yet eaten this morning. The head chef worked quickly. Before long, each dish was brought over in turn. The pork wontons in clear soup were plump with fine minced filling. The shrimp shumai were full and bouncy. The osmanthus sticky rice balls were soft and sweet. And the eel noodle soup was rich and brightly flavored. The fried fish was golden brown and fragrant, paired with rice vinegar dipping sauce that cut through the grease, enhancing the mild flavor of the fish. Among the assortment of delicacies were fried dough sticks unique to Lin'an City, consisting of a snow-white layer of dough, thin as a cicada's wing, wrapped around 2 crispy dough sticks and pressed flat on the grill, with green onion sandwiched between them. The whole spread with a thick layer of tian mian sauce. Every bite was shatteringly crisp with fried dough and lightly sweet with sauce. Oh my god. Stop. Meat bun. You got to stop somewhere. After Moshi had tried them all, he ordered seconds of the items Gumong would like and asked the waiter to package them up. As he sipped his soup and waited, he heard the Yue clan's name from the neighboring table. I saw them early this morning," said an older woman. "Yue Juntian took the entire Yue clan to that Huntian cave on the outskirts of the city. I'd just come back from picking wild greens and bumped into their honor guard right at the gates. It gave me quite a fright." "What are you afraid of?" the farmer next to her teased. "Worried old man Yue is going to snatch you up and make you his concubine?" "Old Yue is all about a pretty face. You're middle-aged now. He wouldn't look twice at you. No need to worry." "What do you mean he wouldn't look at me?" raged the woman. "So what if I'm middle-aged? I've still got it. Eat your noodles instead of wasting your breath being rude." A second man at the table chuckled. "But I heard Yue Juntian's health is getting worse every year. He got around plenty when he was young, but now he has no energy for it." "That's right," the woman said. "You guys didn't see him. His face was waxy yellow, like someone dug him out of a coffin. But his 2 sons sure are handsome. Too bad one of them's a cripple." "Do you mean Zhang Yishue? He's here too." "Course he is. This is the only time he's allowed to travel with the Yue clan since he got booted out of the family." I forgot that he was going to be with them, or if we knew that or not. But this is all kinds of awkward. Like, Yue Juntian is there. Murong Chuyi wants to kill him. Zhang Yishue is there. Geez. It's the Huntian Cave sacrifice ceremony, after all. There was an out-of-towner at their table who didn't seem to know much about Lin'an or Yue Manor. He'd remained silent as the other talked, but at this point, his curiosity became unbearable. After taking a gulp of soup, he asked, "Friends, what kind of place is this Huntian Cave?" "It's a burial ground," the woman explained enthusiastically. "You could say it's a sealing place for resentful spirits," the farmer added. The out-of-towner widened his eyes incredulously. Resentful spirits." "Yep, this is an old story from Lin'an City. When Chonghua was first founded, Lin'an wasn't part of its territory. It was held by a barbarian tribe. Back then, those barbarians were cultivating with dark methods and imprisoned most of the civilians from Lin'an in the cave. They were going to kill them and then refine them into resentful ghost soldiers. But those barbarian cultivators didn't have the ability to back up their ambition. They slaughtered 10,000 people or more. Their corpses piled into mountains, and blood flowed in rivers inside the cave. Those people resented their unjust deaths all right, too much. The barbarian cultivators couldn't control them. The ghosts lashed out and devoured the barbarians, then escaped the cave, rampaging the land. What happened next? The out-of-towner exclaimed. Chonghua sent a Grandmaster Artificer, Yue Juntian's ancestor, to suppress the ghost soldiers who'd gone berserk, the farmer said. This Yue Qianbei was smart and refined a magical tool that could repel spirits. And Yue Qianbei has a footnote. Qianbei is a respectful term of address for someone of an older generation. In the end, he sealed those vengeful ghosts in the blood pool within the cave and formed a blood contract with them, requiring the malicious spirits to obey the orders of all Yue clan descendants. The cave where they were sealed became known as Huntian Cave. We got another blood cave? The out-of-towner wasn't stupid and immediately asked, but that cultivator must have paid a hefty price, no? That he did, the woman said mysteriously. Let me tell you, they say every 3 years, the head of the Yue clan has to offer up a massive amount of his own spiritual energy to appease these ghost soldiers. He can't stop until he steps down. The out-of-towner gasped. Jie, you just said Yue Juntian's sick. He hesitated. Does he have enough spiritual energy to feed these ghosts? No way, the woman replied. But I heard the head of the Yue clan can give an offering of blood if he has no other choice. That means he'd pour fresh blood into the pool, while the rest of the family kneels and offers worship alongside him. This can temporarily settle the ghost soldiers' restlessness. The out-of-towner squirmed. How much blood would they need? Too much, that's for sure. The woman made an exaggerated gesture. That's why this type of sacrifice ceremony requires the whole family to accompany him. After Yue Juntian offers up his blood, he'll be weak. He'll need his blood relatives to gather chi for him and cast spells or something. In any case, it's all that mystical stuff. Otherwise, do you think he'd allow Jiang Yeshue to come with them to Huntian Cave for the ceremony, considering how bad his relationship with his son is? He's got it all planned out. Realization dawned, and the visitor hastily nodded. I understand. I hadn't expected there was a legend like this about the Yue clan in Lin'an. If I hadn't met you all, I never would have heard about it. The farmer waved a hand. Each feudal lord and fiefdom has its own stories. They're not secrets, exactly, but no one knows them better than the locals. For example, here in Lin'an, we know the stories about the Yue clan the best, because our feudal lord is Yue Juntian. Do you have other stories, then? The out-of-towner asked with interest. I'll treat you to breakfast. Could I trouble you to tell me some more? These people love to gossip and couldn't be happier to share with the captive audience, even if nothing good would come of it. Now that they'd found someone keen to listen to their tales and willing to treat them to a meal for their trouble, they were delighted. The whole table broke into noisy discussion. Moshi remained where he was, thinking through the details his neighbors had revealed about the Huntian Cave sacrifice ceremony. Unease gripped his heart. The entire Yue clan had gathered in that cave. After Yue Juntian made the blood sacrifice, his spiritual energy would be weak. When he considered the truths from 30 years ago Murong Chuyi had just learned, he pictured Murong Chuyi's face in the graveyard, indifferent and snow-pale, cold as ice. I will meet with Gumong after I offer sacrifices in Huntian Cave tomorrow. Before then, I won't touch Yue Juntian. Mo Shi suddenly felt that Murong Chuyi may not have spoken those words with complete sincerity. At that moment, shocked shouts came from the gates of the bustling market. The early shoppers gave way as a bloodied Yue clan guard staggered in through the eastern market gates. Half his face had been torn away, the bloody scraps of flesh dangling below his jaw. Terrified women and children scattered like birds at the gruesome sight. The guard seemed to be dragging himself in the direction of Yue Manor, but he clearly knew he hadn't much longer to live. When he collapsed heavily to the ground, he didn't pick himself back up. Instead, he writhed forward and grabbed the closest bystander. Looking up, he cried desperately, a revolt. The man was trembling in terror. His stammer matched the guard's. What? Revolted. The Yue clan, Huntian Cave. He revolted. The guard disgorged a mouthful of scarlet blood and sank to the ground, dead. Moshi shot to his feet, his expression black as pitch. That's the end of the chapter. Henry, the man... Half his face had been torn away, the bloody scraps of flesh dangling below his jaw. That's where we're stopping today. Blue, I'm sorry that you had to miss some. You had to close all your windows. But I mean, I don't think you missed, well, you missed them, I think, beginning to talk about the Yue clan and the thing they have to do in Huntian Cave and the blood pool that's in there. But yeah. So we're stopping at a bit of a cliffhanger. That's okay. Because we will be back on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, on page 73, for chapter 167, which is called Murong Chuyi's Vengeance. That's where we're at. I don't know why I didn't consider that Murong Chuyi would just lie. I mean, I don't know for sure what's happening yet, but sounds like he just lied and was like, yeah, I won't touch Yue Juntian until, after I see Gumong. Sure. Okay. But, I don't know. Something else could be happening too. That chapter title could be another little trick. I don't know. One thing I had this thought of, like, when they first were talking about having to use blood, for a split second my brain was going, do they have to sacrifice other people? But no, it's just blood from Yue Juntian, or from the person who's leading the ritual or whatever. But I have bad feelings about things. So, well, I had fun today. I hope y'all had fun. Even though that was a lot, and a lot of it was, like, very sad. But I like finding out more and more family secrets. I'm gonna look really quick. I'm only going to look at the thing for Murong Chuyi, but I want to see if the glossary in here is, like, the same as what I had seen. Yeah, so what it says is Murong Chuyi, surname Murong, given name Chuyi, and then it says, comma, surname Chu, which means clothes. Now, surname Chu, clothes. Yeah, and that's, of course, the same Chu as Chuaning. I could tell from the character. But yeah, they printed it like that in like volume 1 or 2. And I just was like, I was not supposed to see that. Yeah, so someone, I don't know, they need more editors or something. I don't know what. So horrible of them, yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Thank y'all for coming, and I will see you again on Wednesday. Bye.